L'kuta Sichas Chelek Chavdalid Chamisha Asar Ba'av Sicha Beis Lili Nishmis Reb Yosef Ben Yamin Ben Reb Menashe Kaltman. This Sicha is also a siyur on Masechta Tainis, both in Talmud Bavli and in Talmud Yerushalmi. Fascinating, the exploration of the differences between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi and how it all makes sense. And of course, a powerful lesson into what are we looking for when making a shidduch. The Mishnah is up a siyum Masechta Tainis. The Mishnah in the end of Tainis says like this: is the last Mishnah in Masechta Tainis. Lo yom tevim liYisrael kachamisha asar ba'av v'chim haKippurim. There have been no other Yom Tevim to Yidden, such as the 15th day of Av and Yom Kippur. Shebohen, which during this time special things would happen, amongst which Bnei Yerushalayim, the Yezgerson, Ubnei Yisrael, Yotzos v'Cholos B'Kramim, that the maidens of Yerushalayim, and some say there was the maidens of Yisrael, would go out and would dance in the vineyards. Maha Ye'emin, what would they say? Bacher, sa noi necho re'ei ma'ata beirelach. Young man, lift up your eyes and see what are you choosing for yourself. Al titenecha benoi, teinenecha b'mispacha. Don't look at beauty, look at family. As the pasuk says, Sheker achein ve'avel hayofi, isha yidas Hashem hitisalo, that a woman who is God-fearing, she is praiseworthy. So we see that what is a praiseworthy woman, Yiras Hashem. On the next pasuk says, praise her in the gates, praise her deeds in the gates. Again, we see what is a praiseworthy woman, someone who has good deeds. So clearly, we're telling the bacher, the young man, lift up your eyes, look at what's really important. And then the Mishnah continues and brings a pasuk. This pasuk is to prove that also Yom Kippur was one of the days of the dance. The pasuk says, go out, daughters of Tzion, and see Shlomo the king, and the crown that his mother adorned him with. On the day of his wedding, on the day of the rejoicing of his heart. Says the Mishnah, the day of his wedding refers to Matan Torah. Says Rashi, in this case, what's the day of Matan Torah? Yom HaKippurim, shnitnu beluchas achrenis, Rashi. This is referring to Yom Kippur, on which the second luchas were brought down by Moshe Rabbeinu. The Mishnah continues, the day of the rejoicing of his heart. This refers to the day of the building of the Beis Hamikdash, which Shlomo was the one to build the first Beis Hamikdash. Says Rashi, on the Rif, which the Beis Hamikdash was dedicated on Yom Kippur. As we know that the year that the Beis Hamikdash was completed by Shlomo, there was a dedication that took place for a week that included the day of Yom Kippur. So we see that Yom Chasanosib, Yom Simchas Liboy are the days are referring to Yom Kippur, and that's the day when we say Tze'an Norenu B'nai Tzion, that the daughters of Tzion go out. So this is a raya that Yom Kippur is one of the days that the daughters would go out of Yerushalayim, would go out and dance in the vineyards. And the Mishnah ends referring to Zeb Binya Beis Hamikdash. This is the building of Beis Hamikdash, which shall be rebuilt speedily in our days. So that's the Mishnah. The Gemara after Mishnah brings a brayse in Talmud Bavli. On this Mishnah, the Gemara brings a brayse. As in the Bnei Yerushalayim, Yisrael, and again Kama Sugi Mishpachas. The Mishnah mentioned the daughters of Yerushalayim, the maidens of Yerushalayim. Says the brayse that there actually were various different categories, families within this general group of Bnei Yerushalayim. The pretty ones would say what? Look at the beauty. Because a woman is meant to be beautiful. Those who had good lineage, what would they say? Look at family. Because the woman is getting married is for the sake of having children. So if the woman comes from a good family, then she will raise a good family. So the ones with good lineage said, look at family. Those who were not pretty, what would they say? What would they say? Take your acquisition for the sake of heaven, which the Mefarshim explain means look at their Yerushalayim, look at their good deeds. If they don't have any external qualities, look at their internal qualities. Later Gisin in Yankiv Kumtza Aferter. So according to the Yankiv that has a little bit of a different version of this brisa, there's actually a fourth category, Koidim Demfal from Mechuores, which is brought after the beautiful ones and the ones with lineage, before the ones that don't have beauty. The Yankiv says that the brisa had a line, those who were wealthy would say to look at the money, look at those who have money. So you have four categories. You have those who are pretty, those who had good lineage, those who came from money, and those who were not pretty. Also, the Gemara in Talmud Yerushalmi delineates categories within the daughters of Yerushalayim, the maidens of Yerushalayim, but it is somewhat different than the Bavli. Instead of listing three or four categories as the Bavli does, the Yerushalmi only mentions two categories. Ha-che'uros, che'uros, k'moi che'uros, the Karbaneda, which is a commentary on the Medrash, on the Yerushalmi, says that the word che'uros with an aleph is just like che'uros with an ayin, which means ugly or not pretty. They would say, don't look at beauty. And the pretty ones would say, look at family. That is how, there's more to the Yerushalmi, which we'll get to in Sif Dalid, but with regards to the categorization of the B'nai Yerushalayim, in the Bavli there are three or four categories. In the Yerushalmi there are two categories. And now we're going to begin a series of questions. Ultimately there's going to be 8 questions that are directed at the Yerushalmi, but many of them are focusing on the differences between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. Davon verstehen, we have to understand. This is Yodua der Klalas in the Shayach and Plukta and the Metzias. We know there's a rule that you can't argue about facts. The opinions, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But if it's a matter of fact, of reality, you can't argue about it. Is the fun verstandig, so therefore it's understood. As the Kuli Almas and inzwischen die Bnei Yerushalayim, hayotes ve'emnes gewen, nicht nur yaf yafies nois umechuares, nor ech miyuchasos and ashires. Everyone is going to agree, both Bavli and Yerushalmi are going to agree, that amongst the maidens of Yerushalayim that were going out and proclaiming these statements to try to attract the young men to them, there weren't just ugly and pretty. There were also with women with good lineage, or women that came from money. So why does Yerushalmi not mention them? In other words, if you're going to say they didn't exist in the first place, okay, so therefore they're not mentioned. But the Rebbe establishes that they certainly existed, because no one's arguing whether they were there or they weren't there. So therefore they were there. In that case, why does Yerushalmi not mention them? We also have to understand the change in the wording. In Bavli, the Bavli uses the term yaf yafiyas, which comes from the word yofi, which means beautiful. But in Yerushalmi, nois. Yerushalmi uses the word nois, which also comes from the word noi, which also means beautiful. So why is there a difference? Why does the Yerushalmi change from the Bavli, or why does the Bavli change from the Yerushalmi? Why does the Yerushalmi use the word nois and not yaf yafiyas? Base. In Yerushalmi Gufas and Nitverstande kam Protum Mihem. Now in the Yerushalmi itself, so this was sort of a contrast between Bavli and Yerushalmi. Now in the Yerushalmi itself, we have to understand certain things. Aleph. Das was die Gourarie haben gesagt, als in der Benoi, ist doch blöd die Beschluss Schlila, was man soll nicht kleiben. In the Yerushalmi, the Gouraries, the not pretty ones would say, don't look at beauty. So they're only really giving a negative statement, or not to choose. But if you want the young man to choose this woman, she should have said something positive, what he should be choosing. Choose me because I have this and this. Just like in the Yerushalmi, he says that those who were nois, who were beautiful, would say, look at family, which we will discuss in a moment what that means. But they're at least giving a positive statement. Marry me for my family. But in the Chaurais, we're not giving any good reason why the person should choose them. As we see in the Bavli, they do give a reason. They say, take your acquisition for the sake of heaven, meaning for their good deeds. Here she's just saying what not to look at and not giving any reason of what to look at. The Tmiya is not going to send this question is even stronger. What's the purpose? What's the reason that the ones who are not pretty should say, don't look at beauty? If someone is not beautiful and they say, don't look at beauty, obviously they're highlighting the fact that they're lacking beauty. So if they're chaurais, if they're actually lacking beauty, then the last thing they should be saying is don't look at beauty. So part one of the question is, why aren't they giving anything positive? Part two of the question is, when they give the negative statement, they're actually highlighting their negative qualities or the lack of positive qualities. So that's our first question on the Yerushalmi. What's the end of the statement? What are the chaurais offering as a reason to be chosen? Beis, the second part is, was is der kesher zwischen noise and tenenach of mishpacha? The Yerushalmi says that those who were noise, those who were beautiful, would say, look at family. What's the connection? The inyan from mishpacha da chamayla von yichus. The family is a quality of lineage. Which is why the Bavli says that the miyuchases, those with lineage, said, look at family. What's the connection of family and the beautiful ones? Mefarshim zayin das mevar. So the Mefarshim try to answer this question. As he bowed, b'nois Yisrael mitzad atzman no oisein elasha niyus ben avlasan. The Gemara in the Darim says that the Jewish maidens are inherently beautiful. It's just that the poverty makes them look not beautiful. So those who are beautiful, those who are pretty, are probably not poor. And that's why they didn't go through this experience that the poverty made them poor. Either sometimes it's the stress or the hard work of the poor people. It could also be sometimes they lack the products to make them beautiful. Also, in certainly in the times of the Gemara, someone that was very skinny was not considered beautiful. So if they were poor, they were very, very skinny, and if they were very, very skinny, it wasn't beautiful. The beauty was someone that was looked well fed. So the Gemara says that if someone that everyone is actually really beautiful, it's just that sometimes the poverty causes them to look not beautiful. So therefore, it says in the Mefarshim, that's why they say, look at the family, we have money, and therefore I'm beautiful. Says the Rebbe, this explanation needs further analyzation. Why? Because according to this Mefarshim, the woman is saying, look at my family, you'll know that I'm beautiful. Why does she need her family to prove that she's beautiful? She should have just said, if she is beautiful, say, look at me, I am beautiful. So this is the second question that the Rebbe has on the Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says, the Hanoi, so why would the beautiful one say, look at family? And if you want to say, oh, I have money and therefore I'm beautiful, if you're actually beautiful, you don't need to prove it from the fact that you have money. So that's our second question on the Yerushalmi. Also here you see a contrast with the Bavli. The Bavli says that the Miyuchasos sat tenenach b'mishpacha, and he says the Nois sat tenenach b'mishpacha. In Yerushalmi, is there makdim dem sug from chudes far di nois. The third question is that in the Yerushalmi he brings first the category of the not pretty ones and then the pretty ones. Seemingly, it should have been written in the order of their importance and the order of the qualities. Similar to the Bavli, where the mention of the statement of the not pretty ones is mentioned at the end. Here too, first you should have mentioned the pretty ones and then the not pretty ones. So why are the not pretty ones mentioned first? Gimel. After listing these two categories, the chaurais and the noise, the not pretty ones and the pretty ones, is the Yerushalmi mamshich, the Gemara and the Yerushalmi continues, is the mit mesayin the mesechta, and with this concludes the mesechta. And so it says, the melech shleima, go out waters of Tzion and see the king Shleima, the crown that his mother adorned him with, on the day of his wedding, referring to Matan Torah, and on the day of the rejoicing of his heart, referring to the day that the Beis Mikdash was built, may it be rebuilt speedily in our days, Amen. Was in dem is nicht verstandig, and here we also have 3 questions. Aleph. Die Reihe von Pasuk 10 oder 11 Geimer wird schon gebracht in der Mishnah. The proof from 10 oder 11, the Pasuk is already brought in the Mishnah. Was ist die Gemara Mechadus auf am Forest bei Mishnah? What is the Gemara introducing that has not yet been understood from the Mishnah? In other words, the Gemara would be explaining the Mishnah, would elaborate on the Mishnah. But if it's just quoting the Mishnah, saying the same exact thing as the Mishnah, what's the purpose of it? Nachmer. Additionally, in der Mishnah kommt der Pasuk Ze'en or Eno B'nai Tzion als Rayav dem as b'yem HaKippurim yem Chasanosim Simchas Libay Fleg Zayin B'nai Yerushalayim Yitzes V'Cheles. In the Mishnah, the Gemara is proving that it was the day of Yom Kippur that the maidens of Yerushalayim would go out and dance in the vineyards. As we see, it says Tze'en or Eno, go out. So they would go out and they would see when was it b'yem Chasanosim Simchas Libay, which as we explained is Yom Kippur. But how does this pasuk work with the end of the Gemara? The Gemara is not discussing that they went out or when they went out. The Gemara is discussing what they were speaking, what they were saying. What was their statement that was drawing the young men to them? So, Se'ena or Re'ena seems to be proving nothing with regards to what the Gemara is talking about. So first of all, what's it saying in addition to what the Mishnah already said? And even if you're saying that it does have a point, how would that point be relevant to the discussion in the Gemara, which is discussing the statements of the young women, versus the pasuk, which is referring to the really when they would go out, not what they would say? That's our first question. Why does the Yerushalmi bring this whole pasuk Tzeno Re'eno? Beis. According to the Yerushalmi, in the Mishnah, the pasuk is not brought in its entirety. What's missing? The words Ba'atara she'it, the crown which his mother adorned him with, is not mentioned in the Mishnah as it's brought in the Yerushalmi. It just says a v'gomer and etc. So not only is the Gemara bringing in the pasuk Tzano, which we don't understand why, the Gemara even brings in more words than the Mishnah does. The Gemara mentions the words Ba'atara she'it from the pasuk, which the Mishnah does not mention. So what is the significance of those words specifically that the Gemara adds them despite the Mishnah not mentioning them? Gimel, and the third and final question is, after the words, may it be rebuilt speedily in our days, is the Gemara Meisif Amen. The Gemara adds the word Amen. Which in the Mishnah, certainly in the Yerushalmi, and according to the Ha'ara, also in our Mishnayos, the word Amen is not there, and yet the Gemara in the Yerushalmi says the word Amen, Umay Taima. What is the reason that the Mishnah brings the word Amen? So very, very quickly, question number 1 is, why does the Yerushalmi not mention all the various details of the women? Number 2, why does the Yerushalmi use the word No'os? Number 3, why does, according to the Yerushalmi, do they say Al Titin Enecha B'noi, only mentioning a negative statement and not a positive reason why they should be chosen? Number 4, why do the No'os, the pretty ones, say Tani Nacha B'mishpacha, look at family? What's the connection between pretty and family? Number 5, why does the Yerushalmi mention the Gourarie, the not pretty ones, before the pretty ones? Number 6, why does the Yerushalmi bring the pasuk Tzeno or Eno? Number 7, why does Yerushalmi add the words Ba'atara she'itra lo'imoi in the pasuk, despite the fact that in the Gemara, despite the fact that the Mishnah does not bring it? And number 8, why does the Yerushalmi add the word Amen? Sif Daled v'yeshleimar dan bir b'chozeh u'ba'akdim. So the bir, we're going to explain all of these issues, and first we're going to preface this following. Seemingly we could have searched for an explanation or reason for every specific question and every specific difference. But it is more logical to say that there's one general or two general ideas versus that are going to address and explain all of these questions and differences between Bavli and Yerushalmi. And in our case, we're going to say as follows: that the difference between the way the Yerushalmi speaks and the way that Bavli speaks is connected with a fundamental difference between Bavli and Yerushalmi. Which this difference has already been discussed on numerous occasions, as in Talmud Yerushalmi, that Talmud Yerushalmi speaks in a more concise and general language, general expression. Whereas in the Bavli, things are discussed more at length and more in detail. So again, Yerushalmi is more concise and in more general terms. Bavli is more long-winded and more specifics. And the time of them bepashtus, and the reason why this works out this way is as follows: because the study of Gemara in Bavel continued for a longer time period after the Talmud Yerushalmi was closed. But der Chibur v'chasimim von Talmud Bavli is given achar shechiber Rabbi Yochanan Gemara Yerushalmis b'chmemei hashana. The Rif brings that the Talmud Bavli continued another 100 years after Rabbi Yochanan compiled and closed the Talmud Yerushalmi. Das heißt, which means, as Talmud Bavli is basroi legabi Talmud Yerushalmi, that the Bavli is considered a later opinion in comparison to the Yerushalmi, and the later opinions or the later editions are going to discuss that which is brought in the earlier editions. And therefore, automatically, is going to be more explanatory and more specific than the earlier versions, because they have much more to discuss. Al derech wie der Unterschied von Lashon HaMishnah, was ist a Dibur Kotzer, v'koil yonim rabim, legabi Lashon HaGemara and Espartatik Zman, similar to the well-known difference between the Mishnah, which the Mishnah is known to be spoken in short and inclusive or encompassing of many, many details. In comparison to the Gemara, which came in a later time, the Gemara is much longer, because the Gemara has many more things to talk about that came up over the course of time between the era of the Mishnah and the era of the Gemara. So just like in Mishnah, in Gemara is longer than Mishnah, in Gemara itself, Bavli is longer than Yerushalmi. And therefore, let's now apply this to our Gemara, a discussion that we're having right over here. There's going to be a fundamental difference between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. Following this approach, the Yerushalmi is shorter and is more concise and more general. The Bavli is going to be more detailed. In the Mishnah, in the Mishnah, which is, as we said before, always short and concise. Steitner der Klal, we have the rule, the basic basis, the basic. As b'nei Yerushalayim ayu emreis al titenenacha b'noi tenenacha b'mishpacha, that the daughters of Yerushalayim would say, don't look at beauty, look at family, on pratim, without going into any details. The pratim is the Gemara. The details are going to be discussed in the Gemara, which is where the various different categories or groups within the maidens of Yerushalayim will be discussed. One of them is der Chilek zwischen Bavli and Yerushalmi. So just like the Mishnah is discussing the general concept that there were Bnei Yerushalayim, and the Gemara has to go into the details of the various different categories within Bnei Yerushalayim, there's going to be a similar differentiation in Bavli versus Yerushalmi. In Yerushalmi, Yerushalmi is going to discuss us more in general. The maidens are divided into two general categories, as we're going to explain in the next column. But in Bavli is whereas in the Bavli we are going to discuss them in more detail. So therefore, in Bavli we have 3 or 4 categories, not just 2. Before we explain this paragraph a little bit better, we're going to now jump in and answer one of our questions of why the Yerushalmi uses the term noise. This also explains the difference of wording in Bavli versus Yerushalmi. In Bavli state the lashon yaf yafiyos leyofi. Bavli uses the word yaf yafiyos and yofi. Mashenkin in Yerushalmi is a lashon nois and altite denacha benoi. The Yerushalmi uses the term noise, and we said why is what we asked. The second question was why did Yerushalmi use the word noise? But the chilik b'neiim is there's a very, very important difference here. Then in zogdem tayar yoifi, when you use the word yoifi, meiben es bepashtus, it means literal beauty. Yoifi haguf, or the yoifi upon him, a beautiful face or a beautiful body. Masheikin noi is a tayar kloli, was ken sich batzin of alerle mailus. The word noi is a more general term that could be referring to various different qualities. You could say this person has a beautiful energy. You could say this person has beautiful kindness. The term noi could be used for various different qualities. Also, it could be physical, beautiful beauty. It could be spiritual beauty. So since the Yerushalmi is speaking in a more general sense, he uses the word noise, which has a more general connotation, versus the Bavli, which is more specific, uses the word yafiyafiyes, which is a more specific version of beauty. Und das ist der Chilik zwischen der Yerushalmi and Bavli. So now that we understand that Bavli is more at length and detailed, and Yerushalmi is more general, and we know that the Yerushalmi is using the word nois, we now can understand the difference between Bavli and Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi tells Ibarais Yerushalayim and Tzveisugim Klaliim. The Yerushalmi is dividing the maidens of Yerushalayim into two general categories. Tivel Chazayna Baalis Maila Nois. Number one, not number one in order, but he's mentioning the Nois, which, as we just explained, means those that have any type of quality could be included in the term Nois. Unchurais. And then those that don't have qualities. The Yerushalmi is a more general differentiation, a more general division. There are those that have qualities, those that don't have qualities. Shenkin in Bavli, whereas in the Bavli is a mechalik dem suk for noise kufin drei protim. This concept of noise, which he doesn't use the word noise, but the idea of noise, which is women with qualities, the Bavli divides it into three separate categories. Nois b'tzad yefi agufa upon him, those that have superficial or external beauty, the face or the body, he calls them yaf yafiyos. Nois b'tzad yichus, those that have beautiful yichus, he calls them miyuchases. When like Jesus say Yankiv nois b'tzad dem v'zayin ashiris, those who have beautiful wealth, he calls them ashiros. V'yesh leimar. And just to understand, how does ashiros connect with beauty? As in them, it's not so much we're complimenting how much money they have in the bank, nor as bazei ani yuson min avlosan, but they don't have the problem that their poverty is going to cause them to lose their beauty. So it's still connected. Even when you say ashiros, it's also under the category of noise, because since they have ashirus, therefore they don't have the issue of poverty causing ugliness. And on the contrary, says they didn't know because they have a beautiful home and beautiful furniture. The Gemara in Bracha says that a beautiful home and beautiful furniture, it expands the person's mind. It helps the person grow. So the Bavli is saying that you have either yaf yafiyos or miyuchases or ashirais, all of which really are under the umbrella of nois, but rather than group them all together as noise, as the Yerushalmi does, the Bavli, whose job is to be more specific and more detailed, breaks it down into various different categories, yaftafiyos, miyuchases, and ashiros. So this answers our first two questions. Why the Bavli doesn't mention all the categories? Not because he believes that they didn't exist, but because it's not going into every detail. It's going to general categories. There were those who had milas, there were those who didn't have milas. In this answer to the question why Yerushalmi uses the word noise, because since the Bavli speaking in general terms, he uses the word noise, which is a general expression that encompasses various different forms of quality. Okay, now we have to answer this question that why, which is the second question brought in Seif Beis. Why are they saying ten einecha b'mishpacha if they are beautiful? Why are they talking about their lineage and not talking about their beauty? According to this, according to this intensifies the question that we had in Yerushalmi. It's true that noise includes one of the qualities that would be under the umbrella of noise, according to the Yerushalmi, is lineage. But nois includes others as well. Nois includes also the wealthy ones, and nois includes also the pretty ones. And mostly, nois literally means pretty. So how does it fit to use the expression, look at family? That was our question that we had in Seif Beis, but now the question is even stronger. Now that we know that nois is talking about all different types of qualities, then it should have been some other statement that refers to that addresses those qualities, not just mishpacha, which seems to address only the quality of yichus. Now, bir bazeh, and here's the bir. All of these qualities that were mentioned above are not things that these women of Yerushalayim worked on, toiled upon, and reached them through their own efforts. These qualities are things that they actually receive from their family, from their parents. The Rebbe explains, lineage is clearly something that's being passed down, because the whole concept of lineage is that you have good parents, or parents with good genes, and grandparents, etc. Ashirais, the idea that some of them were wealthy. So the Rebbe, Abbas v'Ishak Sheda, a righteous woman, B'nai Yisrael, which refers to all Jewish women. Certainly, if you're referring to them as maidens of Yerushalayim, which is which puts together the word Yerushalayim, that their fear of heaven is complete. Certainly conducts themselves in a modest way, where the princess is always inside. Not that she's going out to make money, especially before the chasana. So if a woman has wealth, it's obvious wealth that comes from family. Also beauty. It's not dependent on her. It's genetic. If she comes from a beautiful ancestors, parents or grandparents, etc., then she'll be beautiful. It's not something that she could do to herself. In addition to the fact that to avoid the concept of poverty that causes to take away the beauty, you also need the wealth of the parents. Either way, all of these milas, all of these qualities are not things that they can accomplish on their own rights. They need their parents' help. In according to this idea, now that we realize that all of these qualities are things that are being passed down to them from the generation before them, we now see that in the message that's being conveyed by these women, there's a fundamental difference between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. Leighton Bavli kumtois as jeder Sug hat herausgebracht sein Meile. According to the Bavli, each category expressed their own quality. They each focused on what they were good at, or what quality they had. They should look at the qualities that she herself actually has. Even the woman that says, look at family, is according to the Bavli, she's not saying, look at my family in general, that we're a good family. Really, what she said, according to the Bavli, when the woman with lineage says, look at family, she's saying, look at me, that I have the value of the quality of lineage because I come from a good family. So in each of the three examples in the Bavli is saying that each of them were speaking about their own qualities that they have. Mashakin in Yerushalmi is their teichen amida from the noise ad mezal kuken of these sibas amailes. Whereas in the Yerushalmi is saying, look at the cause of these qualities. Not something that she accomplished on her own, nor they all stem from her family. So, the Rebbe is now going to explain that that this difference in Bavli and Yerushalmi, the Bavli, each one is talking about themselves, and in Yerushalmi they're talking about the cause of the qualities. The Rebbe is going to go into a deeper level in understanding the difference in Bavli and Yerushalmi, and say that this difference that we just discussed is based on another element in Bavli and Yerushalmi. But before we go there, already now technically we have a basic answer. The question was, why are they saying ten einecha b'mishpacha? The answer is that mishpacha is the sibas hamaylos, and therefore they're saying, look at the root, at the source of our milos, and this already fits with what we said so far, that the Bavli is more detailed, the Yerushalmi is more general. So therefore the Bavli says that each girl, each woman would talk about their own qualities. They would go into the details of their own qualities, whereas the Yerushalmi is saying there was a more general statement, look at the root or the cause of these qualities. So technically the answer is already answered. But the Rebbe is going to go into another level. But I just wanted to make sure that you understood that the direction that we're taking. We established that Bavli and Yerushalmi are different. Bavli is more detailed, Yerushalmi is more general. Therefore, the Yerushalmi has only 2 categories, the Bavli has 3 or 4 categories. Therefore, the Yerushalmi uses the word no'is, because it's a more general term, where the Bavli uses the word yafyafiz, which is a more specific term. Now we said another thing, that according to the Yerushalmi, they spoke about sibas hamaylos. They all said, tenenacha b'mishpacha, all the no'is. Because they were talking about the root, the source of not this root source, the cause of the milas. Meaning to say it's not something that we did by ourselves. We got it from our family. Whereas in the Bavli is saying that everyone speaks of their own individual milas. Now we're going to go a level deeper. Zwischen Bavli and Yerushalmi. Also, this difference between Bavli and Yerushalmi is verbunden mit dem Chilek Kanal Siv Dalet zwischen Eifen Limud Bavli Eifen Limud Yerushalmi Kedel Kamon. This too will be dependent on the different learning style of Bavli versus Yerushalmi, and not just that Bavli is beprotius and Yerushalmi is bechlalis. The Rebbe is going to give us a deeper understanding in the difference between Bavli and Yerushalmi, and will help us understand even better the concept of Tani Necha b'mishpacha. Vav. Der Chilek in unserer Suge zwischen Bavli und Yerushalmi ist nicht nur, was der Bavli ist mehr mefadet wie der Yerushalmi, nur es ist ein Chilek ikri in dem Eufen Pira Divrei HaMishnah. Of course, we know the klal that Bavli is more detailed, Yerushalmi is more general. But over here, the difference between Bavli and Yerushalmi is not just that the Bavli is more detailed, but in how they detail themselves, how the Yerushalmi details itself versus how the Bavli details itself is also going to come out to be different. Late in Yerushalmi is in Gemara Nitah Kinaya Amira Legabe der Amira Vashteit in Mishnah. According to the Yerushalmi, there's no new statement being introduced by the Yerushalmi. And if you look back for a second, the Rebbe is going to explain it in the Sikha, but if you are looking at the Yerushalmi, or you look back in the beginning of the Sikha, you'll notice the following. In the Mishnah it says that the women would say, then the Mishnah says, Al titein einecha b'noi, tein einecha b'mishpacha. That's in the Mishnah. Now look in the Yerushalmi. Which means the statements of the Chauris and the noise together, is the same exact words as the Mishnah. So the Yerushalmi is not introducing any words that the Mishnah didn't say. The Yerushalmi, back into the Sikha, the Yerushalmi is blaze mefaret. Ados was state in their Mishnah as the Bnei Yerushalayim for Zagin. Al titin enecha b'noi ten enecha b'mispacha. That which the Mishnah said, that the maidens of Yerushalayim would say, don't look at beauty, look at family. Zainen dos tzvei bazundere amiris von zwei sugi mispachas. The Yerushalmi is explaining that this one statement that's in the Mishnah is actually 2 statements said by 2 different types of families. Those who didn't have the beauty would say, don't look at beauty. And those who did have beauty, which as we explained means those who have various different qualities, would say, look at family. Und der Mit. is forever pashtus, parenthetically speaking, because we're in the middle of something. We didn't finish, we didn't go back to the Bavli yet. But now that we understand that the Yerushalmi is parroting the Mishnah, basically, just explaining it a little bit, opening it up a little bit, but not introducing anything new. Now it's understood, but the Yerushalmi is maktim the churas to the noise. Why the Yerushalmi says churas first. One of our questions was, question Gimel in Sif Beis, why does the Yerushalmi say churas first? Because that fits in the order of the Mishnah. First, the Mishnah says that the women would say, don't look at beauty. And then they would say, look at family. So according to the Yerushalmi, the Churei said, the Noi said, so the Yerushalmi is just fitting the Mishnah into two categories. So therefore, Churei comes first because that's how it is in the Mishnah. Keep in mind that in Asif Ches, there's going to be another reason why the Chures come first. But this is the pashtustic reason. The Rebbe is telling us that the difference between Yerushalmi and Bavli is that the Bavli introduces new things, new statements, new ideas that aren't even mentioned in the Mishnah. Yerushalmi doesn't introduce new things. Yerushalmi just explains what's already in the Mishnah. And therefore, the Chures come before the noise because that's how it is in the Mishnah. But the Yerushalmi, if you look back at the words, how they are in the Mishnah, how they are in the Yerushalmi, you will see that the Mishnah, the Yerushalmi is not introducing anything new. Whereas the Bavli is introducing new statements or new sub-statements that are not mentioned in the Mishnah. So let's open this up a little bit. The Mishnah that itself, first we have the Mishnah. Mishnah tells us tells us a general statement that all the girls, all the women would say, whether according to the Bavli, whether according to the Shalmi, whether they were beautiful, whether they had yichus, whether they were ugly, everybody said the same statement. Bachir, Sano, Einecha, or Mata, young man, lift up your eyes and see what you're choosing for yourself. That's the Mishnah. Now comes the Gemara in Yerushalmi and is mefared. Now comes the Gemara in Yerushalmi and says, "As afal pi as diverter bacher sonai nechorei mata ber lochavim gesagt alib neis Yerushalayim." Even though the first part of the statement, "Young man, lift up your eyes and see what to choose for yourself," was said by all of the maidens of Yerushalayim. Aber divided the Mishnah says the Yerushalmi by the next statement in the Mishnah. Don't look at beauty, look at family. Are actually not one statement, but two separate statements, and which were said by two different types of people. Those who weren't beautiful would say, don't look at beauty. And those who were beautiful, which means all those who had any types of qualities, would say, look at family. So that's the Yerushalmi's addition to the Mishnah. That when the Mishnah uses the words it was actually, says the Yerushalmi, it was two separate statements. One of them is the Gemara in Bavli Moshe, and now the Gemara in Bavli adds on to that. As Ui said the Amira Klol, it's stated in the Mishnah that in addition to the general statement, as is written in the Mishnah, yeah, there's sug proti from Bnei Yerushalayim the noch Moshe gven noch an Amira protis, pesem to the Ma'ale proti shebesug zeh. Not only are you going to divide those two statements into two separate categories, says the Bavli, no, there are many more categories, or a few more categories, and each one had their own statement, though it's not mentioned in the Mishnah. The Bavli introduces it as a new statement. So being that the Bavli is allowed to add new things, so what's happening is the Mishnah has a general statement. The Yerushalmi breaks down that general statement into two separate statements, and the Bavli introduces new statements that were said by the individual subgroups within the Bnei Yerushalayim who had milas. Now, this was all a lead up to a deeper understanding in the Terei Necha b'Mishpacha. So now the Rebbe continues. So the Rebbe this was sort of a Hagdama to understand. The Rebbe wanted to say that the difference between Bavli and Yerushalmi, whether each of them spoke their own milas or they spoke the sibas milas, they spoke the cause of the milas, is based on another difference in approach between Bavli and Yerushalmi. So that difference is that the Yerushalmi doesn't introduce any new statements, the Bavli does introduce new statements. So now let's go back to the Terei Necha b'Mishpacha. Alpia now. As in Yerushalmi is the Amida from the Nois Tenach Mispacha, the Zelba Amida V'Shteit Mishnah. So now we understand that the Tene Necha B'Mispacha is not like in the Bavli a new statement that the Mishnah wasn't talking about. It's the same statement that was in the Mishnah. Is verämpfert was der Yerushalmi sagt. So now it's understood why the Yerushalmi says, as the Nois Pflegen sagen, nit Tene Necha in Zera Pratis Tekemailis, not Tene Necha B'Mispacha. Why the Yerushalmi says that he didn't say look at our own specific individual qualities, but they said look at family. V'ha'asbara b'zeh. And here the Rabbi explains. The Mechuvim von der Amida, wie es steht in der Mishnah, the purpose, the intent of the statement of the women, as it is written in the Mishnah, is to madgish sein as die Bneis Yerushalayim der Herren wie alle Meiles was vermogen, that the maidens of Yerushalayim understand, appreciate that all of the qualities that they have is those nit zeir a Meiles. It's not their own qualities. Nit as koichi v'oitzim yadi asaliyas achayel azeh. It's not that my strength and the power of my hand brought about this wealth. No, that's zegi geben geworden was given to them. The Rebbe is going to explain in a paragraph later. This is known from the word sanai nech or a. But so the Rebbe is telling us, and we'll see that in a moment more, a drop more, that because the beginning of the statement is Bacher sanai nech or a, from this we see that the Mishnah is trying to tell us that the Bnei Yerushalayim are recognizing, lift up your eyes and see that my milas came from above. So before we get back to the Mishnah, the Rebbe is going to say this in other oisius, more in emotional words. Bnei Yerushalayim weisen. As kedei shidduch so matzliach sein, the daughters of Yerushalayim know that in order for a shidduch to be successful, muss der Bacher trachten nicht so wegen die Meiles ruchnistika, der gasmistika, was zet, was gefallen ihm. The young man has to think not so much about the qualities, whether physical or spiritual, but not so much the qualities that he sees and appreciates, nor may havaya isha maskelis. He has to look at the qualities that the Eibishter wants. To be asked to daven to Hashem and to try to choose the shidduch that was chosen for him by Hashem. Bas pleni lepleni, as the Gemara says, that this woman was chosen for this person. So in other words, stop looking so much for what you think you want. Try to look for what the Eibishter wants you to want. Was der Fall? Seinen alle Bnei Yerushalayim makdim, which is why all of the women would start the statement, lift up your eyes to see what you're choosing. What the diuk is, when they say lift up your eyes, they're saying look at the qualities of the woman, both her spiritual qualities as well as her physical qualities, not as you would see them with your eyes down below. First you have to lift up your eyes. You have to look at your eyes from a higher perspective. And then you could see what to choose. As it is explained, that only after you lift up your eyes, then you could see the creator of it. When you see something, you look at it from this world. So you see a tree, you see a car. But when it's when you lift up your eyes, you see who created the tree. You see the elokus, the godliness within it. Similarly, when it comes to the inyan of a shidduch, first you have to have sanai nachorei. Kuchen of the mocker from Vanet Estamen and Kumen up the Miles. You have to first look at the source of where these qualities stem from, which is the Eibishter. And therefore, even when you look at the woman herself and you're seeing a certain Maila, that she's beautiful or she has yichus, you're going to see that it also comes from family. In other words, the Eibishter is the Mocker HaMailis. The family is Sibas HaMailis. And because the Mishnah laid down the rule that when the woman is calling out, she's saying, first of all, look at where everything comes from. Look at the Eibishter. So even when she goes into the specifics, she also doesn't talk about her own individual maila. She talks about tenenecha b'mishpacha because we're talking to sanei nachorei. We're talking to someone who has a higher perspective. So even when they're bringing it back down to the milas of the woman, they're seeing the mishpacha. They're seeing the sibas milas, not so much the individual maila. And then he merits to actually find the shidduch which was announced up in heaven. The Rebbe makes a very fascinating diuk over here. It doesn't say in the Gemara nit plenis lepleini. It doesn't say that on high it is announced this female to this male. It says the daughter of this male to this male. The emphasis here is not in the woman herself. It's in the family. The whole announcement above is bas ploini. The woman that comes from this family should go into this family, or to this person, because the idea here is that when we're looking at something, we're not just looking at the individual maila, we're looking at the makar mailas. We're looking at the Eibishter, who's the one who provided all of the mailas, and even as we lower it down, we look at mishpacha tani necha b'mishpacha. We're looking at sibas mailas, the cause of the mailas, and not at the individual mailas. So this is a deeper understanding in the Tanya Nachab Mishpacha. Yes, that we explained that the Yerushalmi is not being Moshe anything on the Mishnah, and the Mishnah's foundation is that we're coming at this from a higher perspective. Therefore, even when we talk about the individual milas, we see it from the perspective of the Mishpacha and not from the specific individual person, that it might have a very specific individual milah. So this answers the question of why in the Yerushalmi, he says that the noise would say Tene Necha B'Mishpacha, because we're talking to someone that we're expecting of them, we're asking of them for a higher perspective to recognize that all the milas that they have, besides the fact that they come from the Eibishter, they stem from Mishpacha, and we're not focused so much on the individual person. In Siv Ches, we're going to go back to the first question of Siv Beis. Why is there Al Titin Necha B'Noi? Where is the positive? Where is the reason that they should marry? But now it makes now that question is almost answers itself. Now we can understand why the Yerushalmi says that those who didn't have the beauty would say don't look at beauty, and the question was, what's the reason to yes marry her? Why don't they present a reason, a positive reason? But the answer is clear. Because everyone said Sanai Nachorei. Sanai Nachorei is a positive reason. In the question, we thought that they only said Al Titin Necha B'Noi. In the answer, we're understanding that they said Bacher Sanai Nachorei Al Titin Necha B'Noi. So they already gave a positive reason. If you have a higher perspective, you'll find a reason to marry me. Even those who don't have beauty would say this. Because even though they don't have any revealed qualities, from the Chaber from Van and Stam, we have to look from where they stem. As Yedid from says that each of them is a descendant of Sarah Rivka Rachel V'Leah, and that is the reason to marry them. So even if they were Chouris, they didn't have Milas, but they had the fact that they're Yidden, that they're descendants of the Imohis, and therefore we would say she would say Bacher Sanai Nachorei. Look, lift up your eyes and see where we come from. There is something positive about us. So that answers that question. That where is the positive statement? It's in the words Bacher Sanai Nachorei. In the next part of Sivchas, the Rebbe is going to go onto another level. And the Rebbe is going to say that there's actually is a maila in the chaurais over the noise, which in the order 50 the Rebbe says will explain why the chaurais are before the noise, because ultimately the chaurais are on a higher level than the noise, and according to that, it will be understood that al titin necha b'noi is not a negative statement; it's actually a positive statement. And the Rebbe is going to explain this. We say we can go even further. As in dem inyan that this emphasis of the Bnei Yerushalayim, that you have to lift up your eyes, you have to have a higher perspective to zen hecher, to see things from a higher. There's actually an advantage in those that we're calling churos ugly or lacking qualities in comparison to those that have the qualities. To explain this, that which it says in the Bavli, We're not going off to the Bavli now. We're just using the Bavli to understand who the Chaurais are. Who are they? So in the Bavli it says that the Mechuarais would say, take your acquisition for the sake of heaven. So the Mefarshim explain, is Valzihab and Yiras Hashem. It doesn't just mean, we have nothing, so just marry us for without any milas. L'shem Shamayim means that we have Yiras Shamayim. As the Mishnah brings in the Bavli, that a woman who is God-fearing, she should be praised. So that is a Maila. So even the Mechuarais have a Maila that they are God-fearing. So in that case, we have to understand, why would they be called Mechuarais, which literally Mechuarais means ugly, lacking qualities, if they have this beautiful quality of Yiras Shamayim? And this is the Rabbi's explanation. By Mechuarais was habenit keine Meilis, Yefi, Yichis, oder Ashiris, v'chakumah von zeh mishpacha kanal. By these that we're calling Mechuarais, they don't have qualities such as beauty or lineage or wealth that has been passed down from their family, is their Yiras Hashem mitzad atzman. Their Yiras Hashem, their God-fearing quality, is coming from something they worked on it. Zayin dikanidishkin, because they are a Yid, a Jewish child, is reitzu lasis kol mitzvahs. Ulitzrachik min ha'avedas. He wants to do every mitzvah, and he wants to distance himself from every aveda. Zeiderherin, as their Yiras Hashem hitisalo, is mitzad zer chelek lekamim amamish. They understand, they internalize the fact that their Yiras Hashem is coming from their neshama, from the peace of Hashem that's inside of them. Who? He, the Eibishter, is the one who gives you the strength to be successful. But if not for what the Eibishter gives them, they feel ugly. They feel lacking of quality. Similar to the moon. And we know that the Yidden, we count our calendar according to the moon. And the Yidden are compared to the moon. The moon was called small, and the Yidden are small. So there's an intrinsic connection with the Yidden and the moon. What does it say in Kabbalah and Chassidus about the moon? Less lamigar maklum. It doesn't have anything of its own. It has no inherent value. The Mervazi is made as nitir or. The light which shines off of the moon, it's not its own light. The moon merely reflects the light of the sun. And that's what makes her into a luminary. A small luminary in comparison to the sun, and a large luminary in comparison to the stars. So Mechuaris now has a whole new meaning. Mechuaris refers to a person that is righteous, but recognizes that without for Hashem, they're nothing. They're ugly. They're not actually ugly. They think of themselves as ugly because they think that if not for what Hashem is giving them, Yiras Hashem, they would have nothing. And we're going to see in a minute that it's much more than that. They're not even ugly. It's just that they think that they don't have their own value. Und das ist der Chilek zwischen die zwei Sugim Churis and Nois, and this would be the difference between the two categories of Churis and Nois in the Yerushalmi. The Nois and the Divas Filin Zeira Milas. Nois are those that believe in their own qualities. Now, Zevis is an Bnei Yerushalayim, it's Nois, since they are maidens of Yerushalayim and they are modest. They acknowledge that the qualities that they have came from family. But the fact that she's saying, look at my family, does not negate the fact that she believes that she has qualities. Because she's part of that family. She's saying, look at my family, and because I'm part of that family, I have qualities. So the noise are the ones that know their qualities that they have. Just out of modesty, they attribute it to their family. The ones that we're calling ugly are the ones that feel that they have nothing. They don't have anything. They don't feel that they have milas. And the things that they do have, it's from Hashem. Like we said last week of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu believed that everything that he had was really because Hashem gave him the keiches to do so. That's why he was Anav Moed. Because he believed that had someone else had these tools, he would have done a better job. The Chaurais are those who feel that they don't have any of their own milas. Und lieber echt, wenn sie haben Meiles, therefore even if they do have qualities, und I feel wenn sie haben Meiles von Yefe Yichus and Ashiris, and even if these people have the same qualities as the noise, they're beautiful and they have lineage and they have money, saying they just need Zera Meiles. They feel it's not my own qualities. When the Far saying they need Miyachas Zera Meiles to Mishpacha, and therefore they don't attribute their qualities to their family. Was git an ort of them ergish as is about Smiles canal, which would leave room to think that she too has those qualities because she's part of the family. They just say, look, lift up your eyes. They say, look at Hashem. The noise are saying, look at family. We have good qualities, and we acknowledge that they come from family. The Gourarie are saying, look at Hashem. We're nothing. Anything that you're going to see in us is from Hashem, so look at Hashem. And then they continue. The Gourarie say, don't look at beauty. And according to what we're explaining here, what does it mean when they say, don't look at beauty? Even if you find beauty in us, superficial, external beauty, is al titrenacha. Don't look at it. Don't look at something that's so secondary and something that's so this worldly. Lift up your eyes and see. What they're saying is, what the Gourarie are saying is, look at the Eibishter, look at the real and true milas that come from the Eibishter, that on our own we have nothing. Even if they are beautiful, they say, don't look at external beauty. That's not why you should marry someone. You should marry someone because of what the Eibishter has given them. Something that's ultimately true and real. So Ad Kan is the explanation of the first part of the Yerushalmi, where the Yerushalmi says that the Gourarie say Al titnecha b'noi, and the Noi say Tenecha b'mishpacha. And to go very quickly, we asked the question: why does the Yerushalmi not mention all of the various different details? The answer to that question is that the Yerushalmi it speaks in a more holistic, in a more general way. Why does the Yerushalmi use the word nois? Is because nois is a more general term that includes various different milas. Why does the Yerushalmi say that he's saying that's saying al titein einecha benoi? It's because it's coming as a hemshech to son noinecha or a. So first of all, on a basic level, they are saying a davar maila about themselves, that we are children of Sarah Rivka Rachel V'Leah. In the deeper pshat in the Sikha, he's ultimately saying that the fact that they're Gourarie means they have milas. They're just not recognizing those milas as their own, and therefore they say son noinecha or a. Look at the Eibishter, and don't look at superficial or external things. Why does it say Tenecha b'mishpacha? Is because according to the Yerushalmi, they're saying to look at Sibas HaMailis, and as we explained more in depth, because the Yerushalmi is coming behemshech to the Mishnah, where the Mishnah said so we're trying to look at the source of things. So even when they talk about their own milas, they say look at family, acknowledging that what they have is not their own accomplishments. And why is he maktim Gourarie to noise? First of all, because the Yerushalmi is parroting the Mishnah, and therefore in the Mishnah the al titnecha b'noi comes first, and therefore the Yerushalmi says it first. And also according to the second explanation in the Sikha, because ultimately the Gourarie have a greater mila than the noise, that they are the ones that have so much humility that they attribute everything that they have to Hashem. They don't see anything to themselves, so really they're on a higher level than the noise. Therefore, the Gourarie are mentioned first before the noise. Now in Sif Tes and on, we're going to go to the end of the Yerushalmi, the pasuk Tzeno Orenu. Our questions were: number one, why does the Yerushalmi bring in Tzeno Orenu at all? What's it adding on? Number two, why does the Yerushalmi add the words Ba'atara Sheitah Le'imai? And number three, why does the Yerushalmi add the word Amen? Sif Tes. We'll understand why the Yerushalmi continues by bringing a second time the pasuk Tzeno. Weil die Kavona in Gemara Yerushalmi is to bring an araya after say sugim, because the purpose of the Yerushalmi is to bring a proof to the concept of these categories, Gourarie and nois. Now that we understand that the Yerushalmi is focused on these two categories, churos and noise, and the way we explain them in the last shot of in the deeper shot of the Sikha, the churos are the ones that attribute all of their milas to Hashem, and therefore they think of themselves as ugly, but really they are just attributing everything to Hashem. And the noise are the ones that have milah, but they know that the milas that they have, and therefore they just that out of modesty they attribute it to their mishpacha. Now the Yerushalmi wants to prove this concept that this concept exists, and that's why he's bringing the pasuk Tzena to prove these two dargas. Underfar, which Rabbi will explain in a moment. Underfar is the Yerushalmi dam meisav ala Mishnah. Umaytik tiverte ba'Torah sheitah le'imeh v'chashteinit Mishnah, and this is also why the Yerushalmi adds the words ba'Torah sheitah le'imeh, which is not in the Mishnah, which was one of our questions, because those words are going to be part of the raya that the Yerushalmi is bringing to the concept of these two ideas, churos and noise. The Rabbi explains. The pasuk said, "No, the pasuk said, "No, is telling us two of Shleima's qualities. Aleph ba'Torah sheitah number one, that his mother gave him a crown. Beis b'yem chasanas simchas libay. Zeb binyan beis hamikdash Shleima gebayit. The fact that Shleima Melech built the beis hamikdash. So there's the fact that he was the king, which and his mother gave him a crown. That's number one. Number two, that he built the beis hamikdash. The chilik between the two milas is the difference between these two qualities. Atorah keser malchus is a mile in the melech. Atorah, crown, is a quality in the king. It's a quality that he has. Chazal, as Chazal tell us, as an edus of Aroy lemalchus beis David, one of the ways to prove that a specific candidate was a worthy individual to ascend to the throne and become the next king in the dynasty of David HaMelech is when Teres David Hilmasei. They would try on a David HaMelech's crown, and if David HaMelech's crown would fit him, they would know that he is a worthy candidate. So, Atorah sheitah le'imeh refers to the crown. Shleima Melech was a king. Thereby is the pasuk of Ramadgish, das is Atorah sheitah le'imeh. It's kumfunimeh. But the pasuk emphasizes that the crown came from his mother, the ability that he had to become king, even though halachically king is passed down by the father. But obviously you have to have the training for it, and you have to have the personality for it, the qualities for it. Who gave him who raised Shleima Melech to be of royal quality? His mother. So it's a quality that he has, that he gets from his mother. This, it would be bedugmas di noise. This is like the noise that say, look at family. They do have qualities. But the cause of these milas are from his family. So the Atorah sheitah le'imeh, it parallels the noise. Whereas, when it comes to the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, it was built by Shleima. Aber liidach, idas hakoil biksav miyad Hashem. Das is Beis Hashem. The pasuk says that it was designed. The design was written out by Hashem, and it's referred to as Beis Hashem, the house of Hashem. Uketfila Shleima. Shleima says, Shimcha Nikra, your name is called Alabayis Asar Benisi, on this house that I built. So, despite the fact that Shleima builds the Beis Hamikdash, nevertheless, the credit goes to Hashem. But Dugmas the Churais, this will parallel the Churais. Says that in Isha Yiras Hashem Itisalo, they actually have Yiras Hashem. They're praised by Yiras Hashem. But das Gufa feels she has less than Klum, says the Mebishans. But she recognizes and she feels that it's attributed to Hashem. So this concept of the Churais and the noise have milas, but they attribute it to family. The noise have milas attributed to family, and the Churais feel like they have nothing, is similar to these two things in Shleima Melech. He had a crown, but the credit went to his mother. And on the other hand, he built the Beis HaMikdash, but it was the Eibishter's house. It was the Eibishter's designs. Everything was attributed to the Eibishter. So that explains why the Yerushalmi introduces the pasuk Tzena Orena, because in that pasuk we see these same two categories that Yerushalmi was just talking about, churos and noise. Yud. Now we talk about the word Amen. Das is the time was the Yerushalmi is meise besima in the word Amen. So Yibana b'medevenu Amen. The Yerushalmi adds the word Amen to the words, may the Beis Hamikdash be rebuilt speedily in our days. Now the shayches from Zeb binyan Beis Hamikdash to the churos, because this connection that we made between the Beis Hamikdash, that although it was built by Shloimeh, nevertheless it was Hashem's house. Similar to the churos, that although they may have milas, but they're all from Hashem. Drickt sich aus mit mehr Adgashe in dem Inyan von Amen. Will be emphasized in the word Amen. This concept, this comparison that we just made between Gourarie and Binyan Beis Hamikdash is emphasized in the word Amen. How? Amen is Miloshen Emes. The word Amen is from the word truth. Which is why, when we answer Amen on a request or a prayer, our thought process should be that this should actually become true. To our own eyes, we should see it become true. So Amen means Emes. Was Emes is Sheilu Shinui, beweist auf Nitzchias. Emes negates the idea of changing. Emes is eternal. So it negates the concept of ups and downs. Emes is eternal. Truth is eternal. The Yesafa, Sheyibana b'meida v'yameinu Amen. So when the Yerushalmi adds the word Amen, is Meisif und sagt, as der Sheyibana b'meida v'yameinu beis mikdash shlishi v'tzana b'nyan nitzchi. The word Amen, which Amen means true, which true means eternal, is saying that this building is going to be an eternal building. Why is it that the third Beis Hamikdash is going to be an eternal building, an eternal structure? Is as der far was Mikdash ad naikeder yodecha. It's because the Eibishter's hands made this Beis Hamikdash. Das is Binyana de Kuchabrich, what's the Eibishter's building. In other words, it's explained that the first two Bati Mikdashes were Binyana de Barnash. It was man-made buildings, and therefore it didn't have the quality of eternity, and ultimately was destroyed. The third Beis Hamikdash is Binyana de Kuchabrich. It's not a man-made building; it's a God-made building. It's a made-in-heaven building, and therefore it's eternal. So let's understand what we're saying. Amen. What's the Yerushalmi saying? That this Beis Hamikdash is going to be an eternal building. Why? Because it's Beis Hashem. When das sagt the Yerushalmi, as the Meile von Beis Hamikdash was ist Beis Hashem. Bedugmas die Meile von die Gourarie was der Herren als alles kommt von dem was Bara Eila. The Meile of the third Beis Hamikdash is that it's Beis Hashem, similar to the Meile of the Gourarie that recognize that all their Meiles are from Hashem. That Zayin Begili, where will we see the actualization of this? That you could see in this binyan that it's Beis Hashem. Well, when Moshe comes, the Beis Mikdash Shlishi, was Zayin binyan Nitzchi, Sheyibana b'meheira v'yameinu Amen, which will be built speedily in our days, and it will be eternal. So the Yerushalmi adds the word Amen to make this very point. We're trying to prove this concept of Gourarie, that there are people that have milas, but they give everything away to Hashem, similar to the Beis Hamikdash, that despite the fact that Shlomo built it, it was called Beis Hashem. But where will you see the ultimate concept of Beis Hashem? Not in Shlomo's building. The ultimate building, ultimate expression of Beis Hashem will be in the third Beis Hamikdash. Sheyibana b'meheira v'yameinu. How will you see that it's Beis Hashem? Because Amen, because it's an eternal building, and eternal can only be if it's a Beis Hashem. So that's where you see the similarity to the Gourarie, that everything that they had was attributed to Hashem. And with this, we're pretty much finished the Yerushalmi. We answered all the questions in Yerushalmi. Why does the Yerushalmi bring this pasuk to prove the two ideas of Gourarie and Nois? Why does he include Batara She'itel Imay? Because that's where you see one of the milas that he wants to prove. And why does it say Amen? Because Davke, in the eternity of the Beis Hamikdash, do you see the ultimate comparison? Because it's eternal, therefore it's Beis Hashem, and because it's Beis Hashem, it's similar to the Gourarie, whose milas are all from Hashem. Since this is a siyum on Bavli and on Yerushalmi, in Sif Yud Aleph, the Rebbe goes back to the Gemara in Bavli and speaks about the very, very last statement in the Talmud Bavli, Masechta Tainis. Yishleimar, as euch to see my Gemara in Bavli, was the Maimer, also the last statement in the Gemara in Bavli, which is the statement that the Eibishter is going to make a dance for the Tzadikim, is farbundin, is also connected, nit nor mit den Pratsche ba Mishne b'nei Yisrael Yitzes v'chayles. Not only is the connection that just like the maidens of Yerushalayim would dance, so too the tzaddikim are going to dance when Mashiach comes. That's not the sole comparison, the sole connection between this Mishnah and the statement of the Machal tzaddikim. Nor oich, there's another connection. Mit an Inyan von Sheyibana b'meida v'meinu, where steht b'siyum Mishnah. The Mishnah ends that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be rebuilt speedily nowadays. And in connection to that, the Talmud Bavli brings the Eibishter is going to make a dance for the tzaddikim. As in dem zman von la'asid. Shibana b'meidav yameinu v'tzaynit nadarinya for simcha b'chlal, that when Mashiach comes and the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt, it's not just going to be a general joy. Yem simchas libas ben Beis Hamikdash, just the joy of building the Beis Hamikdash. But the way the simcha will be expressed will be that the Eibishter is going to make a dance for the tzaddikim. So that's the end of the Bavli. The end of the Bavli is that which we said in the Mishnah, that there's going to be a simcha. Yom simchas libas, that means Mashiach comes, the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt, there's going to be a simcha. The Bavli adds to this and tells us what kind of simchas are going to be, that the Eibishter is going to make a dance for the tzaddikim. Now, we are at the very, very end of the Sikha, but following the going of the Sikha, that there's a chiluk halimud between Bavli and Yerushalmi in this very detail. The fact that the Yerushalmi says the word Amen, and the Bavli says, that the Eibishter is going to make a dance for the tzaddikim, in that itself you see a difference in the approach of Bavli versus Yerushalmi. Which is not necessarily negaya to the Havana of the rest of the Sikha. But once we establish this concept, we see this in many, many more details. We see this here as well. The Gemara in Yerushalmi is Blaze Mefarish the Mishnah. What do we say? We said earlier that a Yerushalmi doesn't add anything new to the Mishnah. It just explains the Mishnah. And the Bavli could add on new things that aren't discussed in the Mishnah at all. We see that right over here. The Gemara in Yerushalmi is Blaze Mefarish the Mishnah. The Yerushalmi goes as far as saying that this Beis Hamikdash that's going to be rebuilt, which the Mishnah spoke about, is going to be in the manner of Amen, eternal. Whereas the Gemara in Bavli introduces new details the Mishnah didn't even talk about. And this is what the Bavli says. And this is the end of the Masechta. The Eibishter is going to make a dance for the tzaddikim. And he's going to dwell amongst them in Gan Eden. Which is another detail that the Gemara didn't talk about. Everyone is going to point with their finger again. The Mishnah didn't mention this. But nevertheless, the Bavli, as it does, introduces these new details. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, the Amar B'Yemahu, it's going to be said on that day, Hine Elokeinu Zeh. This is our Eibishter. Kivinu le v'yeshienu. We hoped for him to help us. Zeh Hashem kivinu le. This is the Hashem that we hoped for. Nogila v'nismecha b'shuase. We're going to dance and we're going to rejoice in his salvation. So these details are added in by the Bavli, because that is the derech of the Bavli, to add details to a discussion that already began in the Mishnah. Whereas the Yerushalmi doesn't add new details, and therefore he says the word Amen, just saying that it's going to be an eternal building. And they again are following their respective approaches.